Okie dokie. Right. Nightingale, the best looking survival game coming in 2023 by Force Gaming. Remember to go like and subscribe. Let's check it out.
Today we're going to be taking an updated look at Nightingale. This is the upcoming shared world survival crafting game that was first revealed about a year ago at the Game Awards. It's being made by Inflection Games. They are a new development studio based in Canada and being led by Aaron Flynn, formerly of BioWare and probably best known for his involvement in games like Mass Effect.
Mass Effect, one of the greatest trilogies of all time in gaming, if not one of the best, if not the best series. Best series? Maybe.
Knights of the Old Republic and Dragon Age. Even though this is the studio...
I've never played through Dragon Age. I played through like 4 hours of Dragon Age Origins when it first came out and never went back to it, but I really need to and want to.
His very first project, it is looking like it could be a solid contender. They are aiming to, according to Aaron Flynn, take some of the best of BioWare's narrative and story design philosophies and bring that into the survival genre, which is something you don't see a lot of in survival games. They're not exactly...
I'm going to be honest, I don't really care about the story part of a survival game. The thing I care about the most is base building, gameplay, graphics, and more so the survival element I really enjoy. One thing I hate about survival games is they'll make you eat an entire boar or an entire deer every 10 minutes. I hate that. I like a game that's got a really good balance. The Long Dark is one of those games that's got a phenomenal survival balance, but it has absolutely no base building, which is the biggest flaw in it for me. I actually heard that The Long Dark, if I'm not wrong, is coming out with some new... Yeah. They're coming out with a DLC that you can buy with new content for their survival mode, which is super exciting. That's the music, but it says here, Tales from the Far Territory. All I want them to do is add base building. We might actually watch this after, maybe. Let's get back to the video.
Known for like their narrative and world building for the most part, and you know, I'll say as of now, I think this is easily one of the best looking survival games that is scheduled for release in 2023. So I've been keeping...
It's not coming out in 2023. Every single survival game on the planet always delays by 1 to 3 years, standard. So
tabs on this one, and there have actually been a ton of updates since the last video. Just as a basic recap though, if you aren't up to speed, Nightingale is a survival game through and through. So you'll start off with nothing, you go out, you get resources, and then you use those to craft weapons, gear, and even build a base. The game is set in this like Victorian themed fantasy world with enemies that are designed and inspired by folklore from the Victorian era. And the big feature, the big gimmick in Nightingale...
I do love immersion in games, and the fact that when this enemy dies,
from
if you
the
look
Victorian...
at the body, it kind of fades away. I like that rather than bodies despawning, there's some kind of lore element as to why the body disappears. Lore is incredibly important when it comes to immersion, and it looks like having the team or people from BioWare working on this, they're already thinking of that immersion factor.
Era. And the big feature, the big gimmick in Nightingale is this realm system. You basically have these portals that you take to travel between realms, and these will not only be visually distinct from like having different biomes and a procedural generated layout, but they also will each have their very own resources, enemies, and unique NPCs. And this also ties into player agency through the card system, which will...
I wonder how procedural it's going to be. Like, every time you go through a portal, are you in a new procedurally generated area? Or does it just mean that there are like 5 different areas and each one was procedurally generated, but it will always be those same 5?
We'll talk about later. And then lastly, this is a cooperative game, so you're able to play and group with other players, fighting enemies and building stuff together, but it's not a competitive survival title. I know a lot of games in this genre have a focus on PvP.
Building.
As of currently, they have no plans to include player versus player in Nightingale. So that is like the TLDR of Nightingale. Let's take a look at all of the updates we've had since the last video.
Dude,
Before we jump into that though, I do want to take a moment for a quick word word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Nacon for the Warhammer 40k Inquisitor Martyr
Warhammer
Ultimate Edition. This is the
Inquisitor
first action
actually a
RPG
good
set
game.
in the 40k universe. It features both fast-paced and
I haven't
tactical
played
combat
many
with multiple classes
Warhammer
of the Inquisition
games,
for you to play
but
as.
Inquisitors
are
actually
some of the
good.
most powerful agents of the
Although
Imperium,
I'm pretty
and
sure
will
last time
venture
I
out
checked,
to
the
cleanse
reviews
this
were
region
kind of mixed.
overrun with heretics, mutants, and demons of chaos.
I really
The
wanna
game's got
play,
destructible environments
Mechanicus.
and a cover-based combat system.
That's
It's got
really good
in-depth
as well.
skill trees and a wide range of vehicles and weapons to choose
It's weird
from.
to me that they're
Inquisitor has
advertising
had
this.
4 years worth of updates with over 25 pieces of DLC. The game supports native 4K, high-res textures, cross-gen multiplayer, and an upgrade path for owners.
If you're into like Diablo-esque content, this is a good game for you.
Of the previous console editions. Warhammer 40k Inquisitor Martyr Ultimate Edition is now available on PS5 and Xbox Series, and if you're interested in checking out the game, be sure to use the link in the description below. Okay, so now on to Nightingale's Discord Q&A. I'm not going to be reading these questions and replies verbatim, but I want to touch on some of the bigger, more interesting things that they revealed, broken up into various categories. So when asked what the end game of Nightingale will look like, they said that it is our ambition that there will always be something to do in the game, new realms to explore, new structures to build, and new gear to craft, all in the spirit of, quote, endless adventure. Now, it is my understanding that as they move through development, they're going to continue to add more things to kind of play into the end game. We know that the ultimate end goal is to reach this fabled city of Nightingale. Whether or not that city is going to have any content to it or just be like a social hub with letting you see other players and interact with NPCs, that we don't know. But the basic idea is that you are realm hopping and these realms get progressively harder. We can presume that maybe they will add realm cards that act as end game areas, like a lava region or something like that. You know what I mean? It's certainly quite possible. They were asked how the death system would work in this game. They said right now we've got a fairly standard death system where players will lose their full inventory on death and respawn at their respite spawn point. There are no...
I so desperately hope that there is a lore reason, or there's a reason in the lore as to how you respawn. I really hope there is.
Timer.
Like normally whenever I start playing a game of 7 Days to Die, I do permadeath. So I might live for 2 hours, die, and then I won't play that game again for 6 months to a year. I might live for months in the game. And then just burn out of it. But I do one death only because there's no lore reason as to how you come back to life. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't like it. Like in the game Scum, when you come back to life, you're a brand new prisoner parachuting down. So you kind of have a reason that you're alive, and you know, you're not actually you. You're finding your old stuff again. You know, you're finding someone else's old stuff. So you can get into it and immerse yourself. But for 7 Days to Die, you literally just respawn on a bed. I really dislike that.
To get your inventory back, and there are death markers to show you where it is. Any buffs that you may have had pre-death will also be removed, such as any food buffs that you got. So this actually reminds me of Valheim. That's basically how it worked in Valheim. I think it's pretty cool as it adds a real sense of you don't want to be careless and approach that maybe high-level monster or that very scary situation. It just kind of forces you to be a little bit more careful as you're venturing out into the unknown or approach.
Valheim had a decent system to it. Hey Uki, how's it going? Valheim had a decent system to it where, what was it you do in Valheim again? It's when you die, you come back to life because you're kind of in a limbo. So it doesn't make sense that you would die because you're in limbo. You're stuck there for eternity until you can do what you need to do in order to ascend to Valhalla. I think that was kind of the storyline, or at least that was how I understood it, which I think is really cool. I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that it's going. I know you're a busy bee. Yeah, I'm doing well. Just watching this video. Nightingale, the best looking survival game coming in 2023.
Approaching creatures or situations that you haven't before. So I do find value in that sort of death system that has an actual impact. Like dropping all your stuff, that's a pretty big deal, especially if you are far from home. Resource depletion within zones. They said that most resources do not respawn naturally, and the main way of getting additional resources is to venture into further realms. So that is really...
I love that. You have to keep venturing out in order to get new supplies. You can't just... Oh, Dude, what I would love for a game like this is a bounty board system where you can put up a board within your little house or outside your house in a walled-in area, and then you can put up what you need. So basically making your own quests. So you need 200 wood, 100 stone. You put that up as a bounty, then it comes up as a mission for you. That'd be really cool.
Interesting, and does push the idea of continuously gathering realm cards and opening up portals to new realms to move out, because you could just run out of the resources in the realm that you're on. Now, one thing I don't think we've gotten an answer to as of now, and I'm really curious about, is just the general size and scale of each of the individual realms. Clearly, each realm is not like endless, because if it were, we wouldn't have to worry about resource depletion. So I'm really wondering how they're going to handle the parameters of the realms in this game. Magic, we know that magic is going to be in Nightingale. How is it?
I'm assuming there's no respawning, but you will be able to, you know, cut down a tree, but you can plant a seed. I don't know how they would do that with rocks and minerals and stuff, but at the very least with trees, I would assume you can do that.
Going to work? Well, they said as humans, they lack the innate magical abilities, so spells will be tethered to weapons or tools, but using spells with these items will use...
I've just realized that my microphone is coming in really low today. I'm going to have to tweak that after stream.
Up some of that item's durability, which I am not sure if that is something that's going to be repairable. So that's cool. We're not going to be casting spells from our hands. It's more we're going to be having these magic imbued items. As a survival game, there is a hunger system. They say as of now.
I love a hunger system. Sounds a bit rusty or general survival and open worldy. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a survival game. It's not supposed to be PvP focused, which I like. I dislike PvP. In most games like this, I like working together. That's fun for me. Having someone kill me and steal all my loot, that's annoying to me. Made worse by hackers. But yeah, I mean, I think one thing that you'll like, Uki, is that it is set in like the Victorian era, so everything and everyone
now
looks
going
really
hungry
cool
is going to give you debuffs, but it will not
like,
kill you. And they're experimenting with different
Victorian.
other types of systems, but things like thirst and hunger appear to be in the game, and just like I said, will apply debuffs. And then they were asked about pets and mounts, and they said they've played with these systems. They've prototyped pets, but they haven't moved into production, and mounts have not really been looked into to a
Dude, look at the scale. Yo, that looks great. I wonder how far out you can go. Looks interesting. Kind of like the look. Yeah, I'm digging the look as well. Very like fantasy fairy-esque, you know?
Significant degree. I'm not expecting mounts. I guess pets would be kind of cool. I don't really care, honestly, but we'll see. It's you know, if some little squirrel wants to follow me around and pick up loot for me, that'd be good, I guess. All right, now on to some information about bases and base building and how that's gonna work. So they were asked if players will be able to build anywhere, and the answer is yes. Players can build wherever they like.
Dude,
landscape and other natural features.
Hold on, I need to see that again. That looked amazing.
So they were asked if players will be able to build anywhere, and the answer is yes. Players can build wherever they like, landscape and other natural features permitting, and that they are working hard to ensure performance is maintained, even with the very complex player-built structures. That is actually something that
I'd be screaming at the top of my lungs in anger if I just built a base and some giant... Literally, some giant comes along and does this.
Very complex player.
I'd be so angry. Didn't Conan Exiles have that? Or doesn't Conan Exiles have that? You can summon some kind of giant beast or something? I haven't played Project Zomboid in ages. You're playing on a public server I can maybe join? No, I'm going to be playing solo because I'm playing for the first time. I'm going to be playing the tutorial and then jumping into the game after this video, probably.
It's actually something that does plague a lot of games that allow you to just build everywhere and however big you want. Maybe one way they deal with that is just having a limitation, like you place down a zone of building and then you can build within that zone, or only have so many structures using up some sort of capacity, some sort of resource. Again, we'll see how they handle it, but performance is of the utmost importance. I don't care if a game lets me like build across the entire landscape if it runs like garbage the whole time. Because of that, I would rather it just be restricted and run smoothly. That's the the ideal. But if you can make it big and have it run perfectly smooth, that's fine too, right? In terms of being able to edit buildings, they say currently pieces can be destroyed by you or your party members after they are built. This destruction will give some of the resources back for reuse, and they're also looking for you to be able to edit and move already placed structures. That would be really good if we could just take a thing that we've already built and move it around.
I'm not a big fan of editing and moving stuff, mostly because it doesn't make sense, like lore-wise, you know? But for convenience sake, that's great. And you don't have to move. You can just destroy if you want to immerse yourself that way. Solo, you mean you can't just pop in and troll you and build anywhere? Nope. I'm playing solo.
Around and place it in a new spot. That would be great. And then speaking of base building and stuff, we do know that there will be a system of enemy NPCs attacking your bases, and they touched on that as well. Players can set up barricades or structures to keep outbound. That is like the basic enemy faction that's attacking you. Players can then attack the bound from a safe distance using ranged weapons. This is something that's constantly evolving and we'll be showing more of in the future. So yeah, you're going to build up.
The look of this kind of reminds me of Dishonored, a little bit.
Bases, but there is an enemy faction called the Bound. They're kind of like twisted humanoids, and they will be consistently attacking your bases, and it's something that you will have to set up structures or actually physically defend yourself. In terms of this game's crafting system, they said that they pulled inspiration from a lot of games in the genre, as well as complementary genres, and that Realm Walkers will be given some basic recipes for crafting and schematics for building from the start, and then you'll be able to discover new schematics by collecting certain materials, talking to NPCs, or completing quests, which I haven't touched on yet in this video, but yes, this game is going to have NPCs that you will chat with. They will be quest givers, and there will be a storyline, and that's kind of that like BioWare through line.
I don't know if I've ever really seen a survival game that's got a good story to it. I don't think I have. Valheim actually kind of has a story, but it's a very hands-off story. It's kill these things, that's pretty much it. So if this is your first time playing, all I can say is good luck. Thank you, Under. Wait, Uki, are you talking about Project Zomboid or Nightingale?
That Aaron Flynn and his team appear to be wanting to bring to their game, to Nightingale. And that is one of the, besides like the setting and the look of this game, which I think are really cool, the idea that they're going to try to really focus on the world building.
That all? Okay. The Forest has a good story. I tried playing The Forest in VR and I really enjoyed it, but burned out real quick because you needed to gather so many materials to build any kind of base, and the combat was really rubbish, especially in VR. Subnautica, true, that actually was a story open world survival game, wasn't it? Good point. Subnautica had a good story. I haven't finished Below Zero yet. I enjoyed Below Zero, but it felt like a lot of the same stuff, but not done. But Subnautica Below Zero was more of the same with none of the original feeling. Like, there was no fear of doing anything because I kind of knew what might be coming, you know? I should go back and play that at some point.
Again, it's a nice divergence from what survival games typically are, which are just like pick up your resources, craft stuff, and go fight other players. This isn't a PvP game, and it's going to have a narrative focus. And I think that's an interesting twist. I don't know if that's ultimately going to be a better game or not. They're certainly making some decisions here and not having PvP. Who knows, really, if that player base it finds that appealing. But I think it's a interesting idea to kind of mix up the genre a bit. Okay, so now we got some information talking about the multiplayer and co-op aspects of the game. They were asked if you would be able to solo in this game, and they said that their intention is that solo players will be able to play the entire game by themselves, but completionists may have a bit of a challenge on their hands. The takeaway from that is that there will be very hard content, probably requires a group or a very skilled, very prepared, maybe even over-geared player. They were asked if groups can split up into different realms, and the answer is basically yes. Even if you're playing with your friends, you can venture out through the portals into the different realms. World save data.
That's cool. So you could all go on your own little journey while all playing on the same server. Cool.
You know, we're crafting these realms and they're procedurally put together. Where's this saved? How does that work with multiplayer? So they say that world save data is hosted in the cloud. The world save will be hosted by a specific player. Other players in your party will be able to continue playing if the host disconnects, but they will not be able to spin it up themselves. How many people are we able to play with?
Okay.
Well, they say that they're looking somewhere between 6 and 10 players in a realm, but they say that much like PC specs, it is a little too early for them to share specific details. They're still experimenting with this. And this largely comes down to making sure that performance and sync issues aren't arising. Ideally, I'm sure the more players you could get in there, the better. It's just, you know, they have to make sure it runs well, that everything is syncing up properly. Those are the major sticking points. Finally, one thing that I do want to mention is they were asked about mod support, and they said they're looking into it, and they're going to have a definitive answer as they get closer to early access, but they pretty much have nothing to say at the moment. So after that Q&A, then we arrived at August, and this is actually when they announced a delay to the game. They put out one of those images up on Twitter that just gave a couple paragraphs that summarizes.
There are so many companies that have had to delay. Oh wait, they delayed so they can switch over to Unreal 5. Ooh.
Essentially, too, we want to make this as good of a game as possible. We don't feel like it's ready, but also we're moving to Unreal Engine 5, which a whole heck of a lot of games got delayed specifically because of UE5.
I'm okay
so yeah,
with that.
It was supposed to come into early access at some point this year in 2022. That is now scheduled for 2023. About a couple of weeks after that delay announcement, they then released a video focused mostly on the world and the lore of Nightingale. They talked about how the game's primary inspiration actually came from the book Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. This is a story of two wizards who discover magic during the Napoleonic times, and they use it to influence world events. That, in combination with just a fascination with the Victorian era as a setting, as a time in history, led to the creation of the world of Nightingale. Now, the video from there goes into some depth on Nightingale's lore specifically. I'd suggest watching it yourself if you really want the exact details, but the basic rundown is humans were worshipping the Fae, these creatures with magical powers for centuries. Humans basically treated them as gods. But one day the humans said, hey, you know what? I think we're actually equals. The Fae said, nah, peace out, losers. And they left the realms, taking most of the magic with them. And so now in the current timeline, there's an impending cataclysm, and we have to travel the realms searching for the city of Nightingale. This is like the last bastion of magic and where we need to go to prevent the world's destruction. What I liked
This is a really cool storyline. I like this. This is bizarre, but interesting.
about the video is that it showcased a bunch of new gameplay, environments, and concept art. And this was from the get-go what I really liked about this game, but this video kind of drove it home. The artistic direction and design that they've gone with, this combination of this like Victorian era architecture combined with like the fantasy folklore inspired creatures with its own little unique twist of magic and fae. It's pretty cool. It's just a cool looking world. It's a cool setting. It's a cool space. All right, moving on to September. We got a blog post, and this was a bit of a behind the scenes look at some of the in-development work. Like they showcased the thunderstorms in the game, and they talked about how they spent a long time looking at like super slow-mo footage of thunderstorms to really nail down all of the specific attributes and what makes it look real and ominous, really. They also talked about how they've been developing new different points of interest, and they showcased some of those. And then the in-house motion capture stuff that they've been working on for NPCs, enemies, and creatures. And this then brings us into October, at which point they released an entire video diving into some of the real specific details about realms and the realm card systems. So they said that early on in development, they invested a lot of time and effort into their procedural generation systems.
Pat,
and then over the years, this just became more and more sophisticated to the point where they decided to come along with these realm cards so that it wasn't only procedural, but that players had a hand in controlling and shaping how a zone may turn out. They didn't want to just have infinite worlds with this procedural system, but they wanted to make them meaningful and for you to have an impact on how they look so they don't feel arbitrary. And I do feel like that is a very difficult hurdle to overcome with procedural, because
I'm still really confused as to whether or not the worlds are going to be procedurally generated when you go to them, or if they are procedurally generated worlds. I'm still confused.
because so many procedural games do feel like none of it really matters. And it's
Yeah.
for that reason I think the realm card system is an interesting idea. You're basically setting parameters for the worlds that you're going to be spending time in. What kind of creatures do I want? What kind of biome? What kind of resources? You're laying the groundwork and then letting the procedural generation kick in and actually change how the landscape is actually formed. So
That's
realm
cool.
cards will be crafted, like we said, based on recipes. You'll start off with some, you'll discover some while you're playing, and then once you craft them, you go to the portal that you'll have to discover. There'll be one in your very first realm. You find it, you take the cards, you put them in, and depending on the combinations, that informs what the portal is going to open up into. They say that once a portal opens up, you can use it for as long as you like, but if it is closed, that realm is lost forever. So you can try the same combination of cards in the next zone, and you might get some similar theming, but it will never be the exact same realm again. Now, as
That is ridiculously cool. Patch, this is a video on an upcoming game that's coming out next year called Nightingale. It looks incredible. The fact that you can mix different cards together and then that will live make a completely unique world, and once you leave, that's it. Yo, that's kind of like that's not so dissimilar to No Man's Sky. You go to a planet, when you leave, there's a very high possibility you'll never return to it. The difference between this and No Man's Sky being that you don't really ever want to go back to any of the planets you went to because most of them are just the same garbage over and over again. But still, this is super interesting.
As you keep going, you continue to progress further and further. You will actually be finding higher tiers of resources, and this lets you craft higher tier items and gear, and also go into more difficult realms, more challenging locations, more challenging enemies, all of that. It is going to be kind of that basic leapfrog progression, which is a very common thing in this type of game, where you start off with one base and you can make these like tier 1 weapons and armor, and then that lets you go into the next level of realm, whatever combination you happen to come up with, but you can hit that next tier, and then there you're going to get those next tier of resources, the tier 2 resources, which lets you do the tier 2 weapons and armor, and you'll keep progressing, and then at some point, we don't know when, but at some point you will be strong enough to face like the end game, whatever they're going to have in this game, ultimately trying to go to that city of Nightingale. And finally, they said that their plan is to continuously add new cards and more content as they move through early access and get up to the final like 1.0 official release. They have no...
I really do wish they would just release it when it's released and not release it in early access. I'm so sick of games releasing in early access. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy Valheim, but knowing that every time I jump in there's going to be more content if I just wait a few months is super annoying. And then let's not forget this, that I'm still furious about. Hold on, let me... Ooh. Oh, because it opened up in a different tab.
Yay.
No. Take your ad and shove it up your ass. The other thing that I'm still furious about. Where is it? V Rising. V Rising, a game that's in early access. The game is not finished, and they currently have 2 different paid DLCs. I think I did the calculation, and assuming my math wasn't off, they've made a profit of like £25 million, or like, you know, depending on rates, like $30,000 they've made, or $30 million, dollars they've made in profit on this, and the game's still not finished. And the reviews kind of reflect that. There was a few that were saying, let me see, I support early access developers who work on honoring its supporters by completing the product. These devs don't. At this point in my review, the devs have interesting projects, but after a while you discover that most of your time is spent on building a castle in a dead world with no content but RNG monster spawns with no story or end game. I refunded this game after 2 hours because I already saw that. This was my exact impression of the game after 2 hours. I was really, really enjoying it. And then I alt-tabbed back in, and I'd been killed by the sun. And I'm an immersive gamer, so I thought, do I want to restart the game with a new character because I died? Because that's the way I would normally play. And then I thought about the systems that were in place. Also, I'm going to have to do that whole tutorial. And the tutorial was still going on 2 hours into the game. And the leveling doesn't seem to work quite well. And the combat was okay. You only get 3 abilities. And that was my impression. I read that review and that kind of confirmed my belief. But I just can't stand early access anymore. Like, there are some games that I'll support, but it's very few and far between, and they have to be super special. They've got to be Valheim, you know? Valheim and... what was the other one? What was the other... Vampire Survivors. Those are the only 2 early access games I've bought in the last, like, 5 years that I can remember off the top of my head. Yeah. Oh, and I guess I got Project Zomboid as well, that I bought today.
Number in mind.
Yeah.
They're just going to keep trying different things and implementing different systems. And that's a really cool idea, that we could keep getting more realm cards, which essentially translate to more parameters for our play spaces. And finally, the most recent news came just last week. This was in the form of a developer update video. They say this is the first and many more to come.
Dude,
they want to be more open and talk about how development is progressing, and also reveal some new exciting things from time to time. So in this one, they touched on the alpha test. The first alpha just wrapped up recently. This was a very tiny test, less than 100 people, in fact. And this was more to kind of feel out the early game system and get some feedback on that, which they got plenty of feedback. People pointed out missing features, missing UI, bugs, and all sorts of stuff. And then they talked about Unreal Engine 5. Again, this was one of the major reasons that the game's early access release got delayed out of this year. The reason being, well, it's just really good. They talked about the 2 major features of UE5, those being Lumen and Nanite. Lumen is the global illumination system that makes for like realistic reflections and lighting made in real time. And then Nanite more or less stops like pop-in, basically. That's one simple way of describing it. People talk about Lumen and Nanite all the time. It is one of the things that so many developers are really excited about UE5. To the consumer, to us, the player, basically just it's easier for them to make games look better. That's what it boils down to, more or less. And then they wrapped up with some community questions. They were asked about how character progression works, and they said everything is tied to items and gear. It is not so much you're progressing like levels and a skill tree. It's all about the stuff that you find and the stuff that you make. They were asked about how creature difficulty scaling will work, and the basic answer was that as you explore deeper into the realms, things will become harder. Something that they weren't really clear on is whether or not the further you progress will introduce more and a more variety of creatures to fight. Okay, so
I do hope that there's some kind of scaling to this. One of the frustrating things about Valheim is that playing it solo is a nightmare because you don't have anyone helping you gather wood or stone, and there's no automation to the best of my knowledge. I hope there's a little bit of scaling here.
Those are like all of the major updates that we've gotten in the last few months. Now, if you're curious when you can actually play the game, well, as of now, according to the official FAQ on their website, they do still have testing planned for 2022. What I'm unsure of is if this is referring to that alpha testing that just concluded, or if additional tests are still to come in the next couple of months. Either way, they are still in the process of testing. You can register for a chance to be invited. You basically just have to sign up for their newsletter. With that newsletter, you're going to get an email containing a survey. You fill out that survey, and that rolls you in the pool of potential people to be invited. And as for the release, well, the Steam Early Access launch is currently scheduled for sometime in the first half of 2023. And yeah, I suspect that we will be getting additional tests prior to that as well. Like I mentioned at the top, this is a pretty cool looking game. I like a lot about it, the settings, the visuals, and just the approach that they're taking to the survival genre. I enjoy survival games. I know a lot of them are focused on kind of the more hard.
I didn't even realize I already have this on my wish list. Had no idea.
Hardcore griefing style PvP, and those are fun for what they are. Like those make for some really interesting, unique experiences, especially when local VoIP is enabled.
Dude, look at that! Look at this town.
Especially,
this looks amazing.
when local VoIP is enabled. You get a lot of hilarity out of that. But they're taking a different approach here. They're going PvE and co-op focused, and they're also leaning more into the narrative. And I'm really interested in terms of how that's going to be implemented into the game. If it will just be storytelling through the NPCs that you chat with, if they're going to be things like cutscenes or not, I'm really not sure. It's too early to tell. But yeah, lots of cool stuff about this just in general. I like the setting and the theme.
This is really
steampunky,
exciting.
Victorian. They actually call it like gas lamp punk fantasy. I don't know. It looks cool. Victorian era folklore fantasy twist, fake creatures. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool, unique looking
really
survival
cool, man.
game. And yeah, I think it's one of the best looking survival games that we've got scheduled and lined up for 2023. Hoping it all works out well. We will see. That does it for me today, though. Thank you guys, as always, so much for watching. Hope you enjoy it. I'll see you next time. Take it easy.
Fantastic video. That was by Force Gaming. Go like and subscribe. Every video he releases is really, really good. The amount of effort and research he puts into each one is really, really exciting. I am excited for Nightingale, dude. I am going to be playing that the second it releases. Really, really exciting. I hope. Oh, dude, I want it right now. I want it now, but I want it fully released, not the early access, please and thank you. But yeah, go like and subscribe to him, and me too. Thank you.